So, do you guys enjoy the stuff we did this morning? Yes?
Yes.
Now, we're coming to an important turning point in the training process. Up until this point, we've been relatively mechanical, we've been building up skill sets and so on, and that process will continue. However, the places we're starting to go to now, inside people's minds, are deeply personal, right? This is the place where therapy gets done. That means a couple of things. Number one, from this point forwards, you need to ask your partners if it's okay for you to talk about whatever their experience was in hypnosis. Do not assume, and do not ask them whilst you're in the microphone saying, hey, is it okay if I talk to them about so-and-so, right? The reason for that is because something that can be totally insignificant to you, maybe a flashlight or a cube or whatever, could be loaded with so many meaningful associations for them that they didn't want the whole world to know, right? Now, this is equally important in here as it is inside your therapy practice, right? Let's imagine you have a guy comes in for erectile dysfunction, some sexual problem, and next thing you know, you see him in the supermarket and you go, hey, Joe, how's your erectile dysfunction problem going? Is it good? Good thing or bad thing? That would be a gross breach of ethics, of the trust the client's placed in you, right? And you can't assume what information is allowed. For example, let's say you are invited to a dinner party or some other event, and you happen to notice one of the guests there is a client or was a client, right? You can't even mention that that person was a client of yours and say, hey, you know, it's been a while since I saw you. How do you guys know each other? Well, I kind of helped him through a problem. They may not even want to acknowledge to the rest of the world that they went to see a therapist or a hypnotherapist. Does that kind of make sense, folks? So you need to be very circumspect about how you work with people. If they come in, you can always tell them, look, if it's like a small town or something, you can reassure them that if you see them in public, you will take their cue from them. You know, if they want to greet you, great. If they don't want to, if they want to pretend they don't know you, that's fine as far as you're concerned. And the same is kind of true in here. Things, whatever happens with your partner, whichever partner you end up working with, it's up to them whether or not you will share with anybody else, right? That means this group here, that means the world outside, that means the person sitting right next door to them. Does that make sense? So can we make that agreement now? Whatever happens in here stays in here, and whatever happens inside of your partners, you work with your partners, stays within that partnership unless the person specifically gives you permission to speak about it. Does that make sense? It's just a good rule of thumb to get into. The next thing, and it's related to this, is because we are reaching these more important areas inside of people's minds, stuff is going to start happening, right? How many of you noticed that when you went through the last process, we haven't even done the full amount of it, just the warm-up phase, how many noticed strong emotions coming up? Anyone? Some were positive, some were less positive. Would that be fair to say? Right? So we need to know what to do with these things. Overall, emotions are good things. There are times, and let's put it this way, when if you sit there, you do something, your partner starts, you know, the eyes start leaking water, don't test it, it'll be salty. What do you do at that point? Do you have to bring them out? Do you freak out? Do you run around the ship and shout, oh my God, I've just broken someone?
Just keep going.
Yeah, just exactly. Well, yes and no. It depends on what the scope of your work is. In other words, if something comes up and they're obviously having a bad time, unless you specifically got permission to work on whatever that thing is, you need to pull them away from that experience. Would that be fair to say? Now, sometimes something just comes up, an emotion comes up, and you just need to release it. They just sit there, they'll have a little cry, at the end of which they feel much better. They release something that was there. Half the time, they have no idea what that even was themselves. They just could feel the emotions. It's kind of like a mind in the background going like, this is bizarre. This is strange. I don't even know why I'm crying. I'm not even upset, right? But at the end of it, they'll feel the same kind of relief, right? So you need to have that judgment point. Are they going somewhere negative? And if you don't have permission for that, you need to steer them somewhere positive again. Is it just a release of emotions, in which case just encourage it? That in itself can be very therapeutic, very healing. Or is something else going on? That other something else is unmistakable, and it's called... Exactly. Ooh, we don't want green for that. This is black. right? Has anyone heard of that phrase before, an abreaction? That word, yeah? Does anyone here know what an abreaction looks like? Oh my God, please help me! It is a shocking emotional outburst. If it's just like, oh, I don't really like this. It may be a build-up to an abreaction, but it's not there yet. Does that make sense to you guys? So if you have any concerns about whether or not you'll spot an abreaction, unless you are deaf and blind and probably physically insensitive, maybe if you're taking drugs, unless you're doing these things, you will spot it. It's unmistakable. If you're sitting there wondering, is this, isn't this, I don't know, then it's not one, right? You may still want to treat strong negative emotions in the same way as an abreaction, just because you don't have permission to work with them yet, but they are separate things. With an abreaction, unless you're calling it up on purpose because it's part of the work that you're doing, you need to put it away again safely. Does that make sense to you guys? First of all, let me put it in context. In my experience, I've been doing hypnosis full-time for over 10 years. I think I've been in the field for almost 20 years, but not quite. I've seen maybe 2, possibly 3 abreactions that I didn't specifically call for, right? And those weren't even in a therapy room. Those were in training rooms with larger groups where other things are happening. That was my fault for setting the context improperly. So it's a relatively rare thing to happen spontaneously. You still need to know how to deal with it if it does. Does that make sense? So let's say you're doing some hypnosis, you're relaxing comfortably, love that lovely river, and suddenly they explode. What do you do then? Do you start doing therapy on that? Do you start, regressing them on whatever the problem was? You start fixing it for them? No, because you don't have permission for that yet. If it comes up as a process of the work that you're actually doing, which you have permission for, then it's related, that's fine. But if it's just you're doing something completely different, just like a relaxation induction or just a little bit of street hypnosis or a demonstration, and it happens, it's outside of the scope of what they've signed up for. Make sense? So, the very first thing you want to make sure that you do is one of the rare occasions where you will hear me use a negative. The first thing you do is something you don't. You do not want to touch the person. Any ideas why? Anchor triggers, exactly. Has anyone here ever had a very unpleasant experience? If you're human, your hand should be up at this point, right? So don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to go back to it. And would it be fair to say there are certain things that remind you of that? Whether or not you've overcome it now and it's not a big deal anymore is relevant. There are things that which could have happened afterwards, which if they did happen would remind you of it and you'd feel bad again, right? It's kind of the opposite of the our song phenomenon. You go on holiday or you fall in love and there's that one song that keeps playing, right? It's kind of the opposite of that. It's like your breakup song. It's like, yep, that's the song that I got dumped and kicked to the curb on, and you don't like it, right? When someone is in hypnosis, let's start again. When someone's abreacting, is their attention focused on something? Yes or no? Do you think there's a lot of critical factor present at that point? Yes or no? No, right? Their whole thought process is overloaded. It's just being consumed by it, right? Has anyone here ever had a really strong negative emotional experience? Yes? Were you thinking very rationally and logically at the time? Were you capable of rejecting the experience as it was happening? So therefore, the critical factor, the thing that stops things coming in, was non-functional at that point, right? When someone is having an abreaction, would it be fair to say that they are having an unconscious experience being stimulated? Yes? So you have the ABS formula present, don't you? That means they're already in trance. Whether or not it includes you is another matter. Does it make sense? If someone's in trance and you touch them on the shoulder, what is the primary law by which suggestion works? The basic principle. Right. You may well associate your touch to the emotions they're having right now, right? In and of itself, it's not such a bad thing. But if you pull them out of this mess and afterwards go, "You all right, buddy?" Right back in. Doesn't always happen that way, but it's a risk that you need not take. Does that make sense? Now notice when I say don't touch, I don't mean don't ever touch that person again in your life. I just mean do not touch them until the abreaction has been contained. Right? There is an exception for this. Would you like to know what that is? The exception is if the abreaction is part of the work you're actually doing, then it's a great test to do that as a touch. You do your work, and then you say casually, so, you know, what happens now when you think about the situation? If they're all clear and fine and happy, it's an extra test to make sure the whole thing has been resolved. Does that make sense? But unless you're actually specifically resolving the abreaction therapeutically, because you have permission to do so, then you do not want to touch them just in case it would accidentally create this sort of trigger. Does that make sense to you guys? Let's have it. Just stand up a second so we can get the mic over to you. Stand up a sec.
So I guess what happens if the opposite happens and they come to you and maybe try and cling onto you or hug you or cry on your shoulder and have an incredible reaction where they're just smothering you?
First of all, it's very unlikely to happen because there'll be so much in their own thing that we're talking about when you're doing hypnosis. If you're having like a friend in a crisis and they come and rush at you and so on, then be very aware at that point that the hug you've given them may well, it doesn't necessarily mean it will trigger it, but it may well cause a trigger, maybe part of that associational thing. Once you manage to put the abreaction away safely again, you will want to ensure that you have other suggestions which clear that particular association so that when you're hugging them, it's no longer associated with what just happened. Does that kind of make sense? It's a good question. So we get the idea of not touching, is that right? Can we have a mic over here, please? Actually, can you guys with microphones, can we just be hovering one in the back and one on each side? It's just over here, just stand up.
So I guess, how do you know when something is an abreaction, like how, and especially with people who are not as familiar with, you know, like I'm freaking out right now and the person isn't even like hugging me, basically. You know, they don't even want to, you know, touch me.
Sure. So how do you know if there's an abreaction?
Well, I guess like the difference between an abreaction and kind of just freaking out a little bit, and then also with people who...
Let me put it this way to you. What's the difference between someone freaking out a little bit and someone freaking out a hell of a lot?
A big difference.
Right. That's the difference in an abreaction.
Okay. And then for people who, say for example, the person going into the abreactive state is not really familiar with the whole NLP, and the reason that I don't want to hug or touch the person, but that's what they feel that they need at that moment.
You can hug them all you want once you've done the next couple of steps.
Okay.
Right? As I say, this is not a blanket. This is a starting point. Until you've contained the beginning of the abreaction, you're in a risk point, right? Very few people will think to, oh, please give me a hug. If they're conscious enough, shall we say, to ask for a hug, it can't be an abreaction, right? It will be, I mean, it's the kind of thing you see when someone gets really hysterical, when they're losing it, where you cannot get through to them, it cannot make sense. That kind of thing is more the range of abreaction. The other is a deeply unpleasant experience, and it may well be handled in the similar ways, but it's not an abreaction. It can trigger an abreaction if you push them on it. Right? If you're not smart enough to say, oh, I better not tread careful around this area, or I better move somewhere else with this person, because if I keep poking that button, it's going to explode, right? So there are often warning signs before abreactions occur, but you'll definitely know the difference. If you're doubting, you're thinking, is this an abreaction? I don't know. Maybe it could be. Maybe it will not be one, right?
So I guess this will also be related. I think like in a previous training room, there was something that ended up happening. It wasn't, looking back on it, I couldn't say if it was an abreaction or if it was more of a, like a bipolar flip.
Okay.
Like going into that type of state, and because I know that...
I have no idea what you mean not having been there. So,
okay, yeah, that's fair.
Ultimately, if it's something that's a strong negative response, and you find that the person is going a little bit towards the irrational, and it scares you a little bit, right? Then it's probably an abreaction. If in doubt, treat it as an abreaction anyway. Why not, right? Because the same maneuvers will work in the same sort of way. Make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. So let's carry on. The first thing you're doing is a nod. You don't go over there and give them a big hug. You just pause a little bit, right? And you don't touch them. Let's do this way. Oh, let's not do that way at all. Let's do it like that. There's something which you just remind me of, which is actually very important that can happen. Exactly. The first thing you'll be doing is staying calm. It happens at the same time as not touching, so that you can switch them around, it's really the same thing. But you have to stay calm, because if they are freaking out, and you're the hypnotist, and you're freaking out, what kind of suggestion is that? Right? If they're freaking out, part of the reason they're freaking out is because they feel out of control. Does that make sense? If you now start freaking out, you are confirming that they are out of control, and it's dangerous to boot. So whatever fear they had in this position, you've added on top of it. You see, it's so bad that even the professional can't handle it. Does that make sense? Sometimes the fact that you're just calm, relaxed, in control is enough to draw them back out of it. Has anyone here ever been afraid? Have you ever been afraid and had a friend who was just as terrified as you, and you kind of made it worse with each other? Have you ever experienced that? Where you freak each other out increasingly? Good thing or bad thing? Let's have more than half the room. Let's play this one. Good thing or bad thing? That's right. Have you ever been afraid and had someone, maybe you're a child and there was an adult there, someone there who, should we say, knew the circumstances, or who was so calm and composed, it started to calm you down a little bit? Did you ever have that kind of experience? You want to be that person. So whatever happens, you stay calm. What do? Stay calm. The next thing you do is you do not touch. And we talked a little about why we do that. That's right? So you stay calm and you do not touch. The next thing you'll be looking at when someone's abreacting, they're responding to a stimulus. Something's happened. Typically, it'll be a memory that's triggered, whether they're aware of it or not, right? Actually, typically, they'll be aware of it. So whatever that experience is that got triggered must be put away again somewhere safe. Does that make sense? The simplest way to present the idea, and please note, this is an idea we're presenting. This is not the gospel miracle truth. There is many ways you can express this idea. Does that make sense to you guys? The scene fades. You want whatever experience has just come up to fade away, to recede back into the depths of the mind where it was kept safely before the abreaction occurred in the first place. That's one of the jobs of the unconscious mind, is to keep material away from your conscious mind that you can't handle yet. It's one of its jobs. So if it comes up and it's in an inappropriate time, a time when you're either not allowed to work with it or anything else is going on like that, you need to put it back to where it came from. So let that scene fade. The scene fades. The scene fades. One suggestion on its own may not be enough. You may have to repeat and loop through it in exactly the same way as you loop through the revivification, through the sanctuary, and all the other things you've done since then. Does that make sense to you guys? So if someone's freaking out, what do? Right? At least half of you got it. What are the other half going to do? Stay calm. That's much better. What do you not do? Don't touch. You don't touch them, at least until the whole thing's over. Right? At this point, you want to make sure that that scene fades, that they push it away from them. Right? So what do? That's your primary suggestion. Everything else, you can word it in any way you want, but the key idea is, it's a simple idea, and you have to get that through to them. Right? Here is where your boilerplates come in very handy. Feel the chair, know you're safe. Feel the ground, know you're safe. Whatever you set up ahead of time is what you'll be using in the case of an ab reaction. Do you see now why that sanctuary, that safety instruction is part of the boilerplate? Yes? Because if you set it up ahead of time, you have somewhere to take them to. This is the time you would most want to use it. Make sense? Now, it doesn't have to be the chair. And if you forget it's about the chair, then you have to just create that place of safety on the fly. But if you include it in your boilerplates, it's just a natural thing that you do, then you can bring them back to that. It's a lot easier for you, just a natural thing. Let's stand up so we can get a mic to you.
Is there a simple way to create that safety scene at the time of the ab reaction?
You mean if you've forgotten to do it in your boilerplates?
Yes.
Right? Absolutely. Once again, it's the law of associations, right? Get them to associate something that is in their experience that is not related to the ab reaction directly towards feeling safe, right? One of the simplest things that will always be present, you want to know what that is? They're breathing. If they're not breathing, you have bigger issues than the ab reaction. And so will they, right? And breathing has this internal feedback loop. If you hold your breath too long, you will begin to panic, right? If you want to experience it, it's an interesting experience. The longer you learn how to hold your breath, do like one of these deep diving courses, you know, the people hold their breath and dive and so on. The key thing you learn is that you're constantly having to hold your breath for longer and longer periods. You're holding your breath after the point at which you want to panic. And that's actually the key element on those kind of trainings, is to deal with the emotional impact. The lung capacity actually happens very quickly, right? So if you reverse that equation now and say, feel your breath. That's right, feel your breath. You're breathing, you know you're safe. You're breathing now, know you're safe. Or if you use the boilerplates, feel the chair and know you're safe. Feel the chair, it's right there, and you know you're safe. Sitting in that chair, feel that chair, know you're safe. Do you see where we're going with this? Does that make sense to you guys? So if I were to ab react, what is the first thing that you do? You stay calm, right? What do you not do? What is the first suggestion that you're going to start making sure they understand? Absolutely. Once that idea starts taking hold, what do you do then? That's right. Now, you realize you'll have to loop through those basic ideas. The idea of the scene fading, the idea of feeling the chair and being safe. The scene will fade a little bit, they'll feel more safe, more fading, more safe, more fading, etc. Does that make sense? Eventually, they'll come to the point where it's all calm again. What do you do at this point? Bring them back. End that trance, right? You end that trance, have a clean slate. Let that trance be put off somewhere in the distance. There's no point accidentally re-stimulating what happened. Bring them back and maybe have a chat with them. Does that make sense? Now that chat's going to be important. Remember, they've just come out of trance, and it's a particularly shocking trance. They may or may not remember any of what happened there. Make sense? So they come out and say what happened, and you go, man, you really freaked out. You got some serious issues. Dude, you should see someone about that. Good thing or bad thing? Great for future business, yeah. Go around installing ab reactions just so you can get rid of them afterwards. That's called hypnotic hostages, right? So this is a delicate thing. As you bring them back, typically I would like to suggest amnesia to them. In other words, you can forget whatever element of this experience you need to forget to stay safe, right? You can remind them that the unconscious mind has been doing this for their entire life, and it'll carry on doing it. Then when they come back, there's no point breaking that sort of hypnotic seal. They may be aware that something happened, like, something happened, what was it? Your job is to be as non-committal as possible. It's like, well, clearly something did happen, and whenever you're ready, you may want to see someone about that. And as that is, but what was it? Does it really matter? How are you feeling right now? Well, I'm okay, a little shocked, but I'm okay, right? So as you start feeling a little more safe and letting that whole experience recede into your mind, you'll realize that at some point you may want to deal with whatever happened, or you can just stay safely packed away until the right time comes. It's really your choice. but now is not that time, right? And to say, no, but I really want to know, then you can, if you are practicing as a hypnotherapist, say, well, let's make an appointment where we can actually look at this formally, right? Not the kind of thing you do in the middle of a bus stop, for example. Does that make sense? Do you understand the importance of that? Yes? No? Maybe so? Do you understand those 5 steps? They're pretty simple, aren't they? So if I'm freaking out, I'm going, I'm freaking out. What do you do?
Stay calm.
What don't you do?
Don't touch.
What do you say?
See face.
What do you say then?
Feel the chair. Know you're safe.
And I'm feeling a little bit better, but I'm still not quite safe.
Feel the chair.
Oh, come on, guys. Let's try that again. Feel the chair. Know you're safe. And then once you start feeling safe, what do? That's right. And you go, oh, what just happened to me? I don't know. What happened? Tell me what happened. Tell me. Tell me what happened. It was not quite nothing, because that's invalidating the experience as well. It's just like, well, something happened. Exactly. You're going to play it down. It's casual. It's, well, something happened. Maybe one day you'll look at it. Maybe one day you won't. Make sense? Oh my God, I'm freaking out. What do?
Stay calm. Don't touch. See face. Feel the chair. Know you're safe. Entrance.
That's good. But what if I'm really freaking out? What do?
Stay calm. Don't touch. See face.
But it's not really fading. It's still kind of there. I can see it. It's right in front of my face. Okay, it's kind of halfway away, but I don't know about this. Oh, okay, but it's still, oh man. But it was like when I was 5, right? Really pushing it. The scene's fade. Okay, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. I feel pretty shitty. It's gone, but I'm pretty shitty right now. All right, a little bit better, but it's not quite there. I don't know. And the trance. Good job, guys. Let's see if you really have it. Oh no! Oh no! I've gone blank. I'm freaking out. I'm blank. I don't know what to do. What do you do? What do you say? That's right. What do you do then? It's starting to fade, but I'm still blank. I'm freaking out. Yeah, it's a little bit better, but oh man, it hurts. Okay, it's gone. What do I do now? Okay, I'm a little bit better. I'm still a little anxious though. Whew, what do you do now? You guys are good. We'll be coming back to this one. Do you get the idea this might be important? Oh my God, I'm freaking out. What do you do? What do you do then? What happens then? Then? Do you get the idea this might be important? Yes. Oh my God, I'm freaking out. What do you do? What did you do? What happens next? Then what happens? Then what happens? Do you get the idea this might be important? Now I believe you. Because you're right. Okay, on to something completely different. Oh my God, I'm freaking out. What do you do? What do you do next? Then what happens? Then what do you do? I am feeling safe. What happens now? Okay, you're good at this. All right, so before all this magic mayhem, we got to this point. This is pretty easy to do, isn't it? Yes? So what I want you to do now is, I want you to speed up a bit with your hypnosis. I want you to find a different partner. And I want you to steal their past trance. I'm going to ask you to steal or hijack the previous trance, the one they had before the lunch break. Would you like to know how you steal a trance? Yes. You ask them, hey, before lunch break, where did the hypnotist send you? And then you write it down, and there's stream, and there's rocks, and there's a path, and there's birds. You write those bits down and say, great, now we have that established, close your eyes, do your boilerplates, feel the chair, know you're safe, sounds around you will help you go deeper, my voice will help guide you safely through the experience. Now go deeper and find yourself in this wonderful place where there's trees and rocks and a river running through it. Do you see how that works? It's real simple. Why reinvent the wheel, right? So learn to steal someone's trance. Now, importantly, for you as a subject, when they bring that experience back to life again for you, when you get to this orienting response right here, you may or may not, you probably won't have the same things there. So if I did the same thing with Andrew again, the rock with the moss covering it is no longer an orienting response because I already know it's there. Does that make sense? It needs to be a surprise to Andrew. So you go, what's that? And then he'll go, oh, it's a rocky moss. Was it there the last time you came here? Yes. Well, I meant what's behind that. Right? Does that make sense to you guys? You want a clear orienting response because it shows the unconscious mind is playing ball with you, right? The same thing happens with a path. The path may or may not be the same path. And the place they end up in may or may not be the same place. I don't care. At this point, it should be real straightforward. This is bread and butter stuff for you guys, right? Once you've made this other place real, right? In the process of doing that, the symbol may emerge, or they may just have a sense of what that place is. If a symbol emerges, you're great, we'll go straight onto that. If it doesn't emerge, then you'll say, great, have a look around, search around, have a sense of where you're at, and notice where that symbol that's been waiting for you is. In Andrew's case, we came in, he found a place to sit on, he sat down, and I said, have a sense around, have a look around. Where is the symbol that's been waiting for you? Where was it? I have no idea, but he found it was a flashlight. Does anyone here know where the flashlight was? The correct answer is only one person will know. It's Andrew, because he found it, right? I don't know where it was, and I don't care, because he found it, and that's what we started working with. Does that make sense to you guys? Would that be easy to do, all the way up to the point of getting the symbol? Yes? It's really what most of you did before the lunch break anyways, and if you didn't get all the way to the symbol before the lunch break, it's just adding one extra step. It's easy, right? So can we add one more thing just to make this functional, useful? Yeah? When you get to that point, you're going to do the whole echoing cycles, and you're going to imply meaning with them. You're going to imply that something important is happening here, that something tremendous of tremendous importance is waiting for them. In the same way you saw us doing with Andrew here. You're not going to push them saying, what is it? What is it? Huh? 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 Do you know yet? What is it? What is it? What does it mean? Huh? 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 That's called annoying. What you are looking for is a sense of curiosity or fascination with, well, yeah, what could this mean? What is this? You want to, as a hypnotic subject, you want them to feel like this close. Anyone ever had that tip of the tongue phenomenon, where you think of an actor's name, a movie, a thing, and you know it, but it's not quite coming to you, but you know it, right? Does that make sense? That's the general emotional atmosphere you want to help create for them, right? And you're constantly returning their attention back into the symbol. There's that symbol. You know it means something. It must mean something, why else would it be here? And yet, you can't quite make sense of it yet. Isn't that right? Yes. And yet you can feel that meaningfulness, the importance of it, can you not? Yes. Is that sense getting stronger? Yes. Of course it is. I'm suggesting it as I'm going along. Does that kind of make sense? And I'm not leaving the symbol, saying it's important. It has something for you. So there's a gift, there's a lesson, there's learning, something for you. Can you see how my whole attitude is anything but frustrating, annoying, or anything like that? It's more like it's insistent without being pushy. Do you understand the difference? Right? And you cycle through that a few times, and then either get the insight or they don't. That is irrelevant. What I'm caring about is, are they feeling a sense of something important is happening here? That's it. Do you think you can do that? Find a symbol and somehow make them feel that something important is happening and really insist on that a little bit? You think that's easy to do? Yeah? So, 6 simple steps. What we'll do is this. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to find a new partner. Find that partner as quickly as possible. Sit down quietly and face this way so that I know we're ready to continue, and I'll give you the whole timings and all the rest of it, right? The quicker you find a new partner, someone you haven't worked with before, the more time you'll have for the exercise. Off you go. So, is this easy, these steps? you have a choice. I can either leave these steps up so you can read them, or I can put the stopwatch on again so you have a sense of timing. Which would you rather have? Only one is best in this case. So which would you prefer? This one here? Okay. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to have 7 minutes apiece. 7 minutes is more than plenty of time. More than plenty. Recall, folks, have your attention. Recall, I do not care about whether or not you get the resolution the way Andrew did, right? What I care about is, do you get to that level 5 level of reality, that second place? Can you help them find a symbol? And can you refocus their attention, echo it back over and over again, always wondering, being curious, thinking about what could it mean, so that they're getting curious, getting fascinated, getting absorbed by that symbol, and feeling a sense of like, yeah, there's something inside me that's trying to come out, something inside me that says this is important, even if I don't know what it is yet. Does that make sense? I'm not looking for conscious insight. I'm not asking you to do a psychoanalysis. They don't have to describe, oh yes, it reminds me of my time when I was my mother and my gay uncle George and his yellow shoes, and those yellow shoes probably mean, right? That's not what we're looking for. If it pops, you will know. It's just this big, if that happens, just ask them what happened. If it doesn't happen, that's fine, provided that internal pressure is gently being introduced. Does this make sense to you folks? 7 minutes apiece. I will leave this up, which means you're in charge of your own timings. Off you go. So how are you guys doing? Good. Who enjoyed that? Anyone? Are we noticing a significant shift in the impact that you're having on other people or other people are having on you? Would that be fair to say? Yes. Today's like a different level entirely from what you did yesterday. And yesterday was pretty cool, wasn't it? Yes. Right? So you guys are doing some pretty advanced work, which is why we started talking about the confidentiality stuff, the ab reaction stuff, and so on. Notice how many of you, by the way, let me just ask this way, how many of you found the symbol in the second place, the level 5? Most people? Anyone have a difficulty finding that symbol? 1 or 2 people? Is it you as a hypnotist or as a subject? As a subject, okay? So in terms of hypnotists, what can we do to help them find a symbol? Can you have a stand up so we can get a microphone over there? Just click it up.
I'm not even really sure when I said, do you see anything? Do you know when you're looking around, do you see? And he said no. And just inside of my head, I was like, well, do you hear anything? And he goes, oh yeah, I hear something over there.
Right.
So it was kind of cool.
So you're going to switch their sense around. You basically, the basic principle here is this. You need to take their attention from where it is to where it is not, right? Because wherever their attention is now is where they're failing to find whatever symbol we're looking for, right? And this can happen if people are thinking a bit too much, they're expecting a certain thing. It's like, no, it's all blank, it doesn't work, it's not there, right? It'll typically be somewhere where they're not expecting it. And you can get it through surprise. Well, there's a wall over there. Now, go check the wall. Look what's the other side of that wall. There it is. You see it now. Oh my God, yeah. Or quickly turn around. It's there. Can you notice it now? Right? You're adding surprise. You're moving their attention away from what it's locked in on. Right? If they're convinced that, well, nothing's happening, you must break that mindset first before something can happen. Does that make sense as well, guys? There's a hand over there. Just stand up. We'll get you a microphone.
So to presuppose that there's something already going to be there to attract their attention. So
yep.
What is it that you're noticing next? What
me,
is it?
Or are you asking me, or are you just suggesting it?
That would be the suggestion.
Yep, exactly.
Something along that line.
Yeah. So you say, look, it's over there. What can you see? What can you sense? I can't sense anything. Great. Well, get a little closer. Get a little closer until you start to sense it. You may not even be able to make it out or see it. You might be able just to be able to hear it. Just get a little closer. Well, where? Now you know that they haven't really followed through on the whole suggestion. Over there. Just check it out. Over there on the left. Just move towards that. What is that? Can you see maybe a vague shape? Maybe it's just a sound. Something just on the edge of your understanding or your edge of your awareness. Do you see I'm slowly building up something if they can't quite handle it, have a handle on something? Does that make sense to you guys? Now, the important thing here, I'll come to you in a second if I may. The important thing here is the insistence with which you come at this. If you go, there's something over there, Can you sense it yet? So it's over there. No? Really? You sure? Right? Do you see how, and I'm hamming it up a little bit, right? But if you're feeling that way, you're most likely communicating that to them as well at some level. There's a hypnotist called Brooks. He's kind of the bad boy of hypnosis. He helped the CIA try and create hypnotic killers. Not the nicest thing in the world. But he had a very interesting thing that he said, which is a hypnotist cannot, or it's almost impossible for a hypnotist to get a subject to respond to a suggestion the hypnotist does not believe in. You can see why now. Does that make sense? Now, admittedly, a lot of this will work better with more experience. Some people are a little more difficult to work with because they're interfering with the process. It's just part of their mindset. Others are easier to work with. The beauty here is the more people you work with, you realize sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not so easy. So you have some good reference experiences and some good food for thought so that later on you can start thinking, now that I have all these positive experiences, how might I approach this kind of person differently next time? Does that make sense? Because you'll always find someone who will fail at. I still do. There are people that I try to do something with, it doesn't work out, right? It's just the nature of the game, folks. There's no 100% in this. However, you can maximize your percentage. You can go back after you're finished with the doing stage and think, that was okay, I got a kind of result, it's a good halfway point, but I feel there's something missing here. What else can I do? What can I add to this? How else can I approach it? And that's how you start educating yourself as a hypnotist. Does that make sense? Everyone kind of clear on that? Can we have a microphone in there? I'll come to you in a second if I may. Just this lady over here. Oh, we'll go to you afterwards.
So first of all, I want to say that my programmer did a great job in many ways in building a lot of rapport and making me feel very comfortable. It was very easy for me to go into that safe place.
Great.
And I already gave him this feedback, so I'm going to say this out loud. I noticed that there were a few times when he actually started doing this language like, yes, that's right. And I was like, oh, that's so not right. Like, it was more like it was words.
Yes.
Watching you sitting up there doing that with Andrew, like it was words that didn't have a lot of depth in it. There was, and what I said to him is, my sense was there was actually moments of real sadness over here. I wasn't in distress, but there was real sadness, and you were acknowledging like, yeah, that's right, it feels really good, doesn't it? And I'm like, no, it feels like shit. So
you mismatched the experience.
It's kind of like, noticing and paying attention over here to what's actually going on. And my assumption is, and I wasn't sitting close to you when you were up there with Andrew, but that you were actually paying attention to his physiology and noticing something when you were saying that. And I think it's important as a programmer that we need to pay attention to what's actually going on over there. It's not about those words, because those words are very disingenuous when used improperly.
I thank you for sharing that. Just to emphasize, none of this has to do anything with the words. The words are vehicles to express an intention, shall we say, right? Just throwing the words out randomly doesn't really do very much. It can actually be harmful, I guess, in this case, and more than necessarily harmful, but it wasn't the most pleasant, right? What you're doing is you're working with whatever you're observing, and the that's right response is really to things that you think are working out well. Something good happening? Good, that's right. Now, what do you do if you don't know what's happening? Any ideas? Exactly, what just happened? What's happening now, right? And here's the beauty of it. You ask someone, what's happening now, right? And they're saying, oh, I'm feeling a little sad. Then it's very appropriate to say, that's right, you are feeling a little sad now, aren't you? Right? Because now you're acknowledging the event, and then you can either use it therapeutically, or you can just ask another question like, do you want to continue with this, or do you would like to move to some happier place, so that you don't start moving into the territories that might cause an abreaction and so on. Do you see how we start following this stuff intelligently? You will do better, you will get higher marks if we were to do such a thing as give marks, for stopping an induction in the middle of a process before you got anywhere near what you were supposed to be doing, and bring the person out of it because they were going down the wrong path, then insisting on going down the path by ignoring whatever's happening around them. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? As a rule of thumb, and one of the reasons I created this as an induction, believe it or not, the fact that you can do a lot of transformational work with it was of no consequence to me. That was not its main purpose. It's a wonderful side effect, but but it's not its main purpose. The main purpose is to teach hypnotists to start talking to their clients, not at them. What's happening? What's happening now? What is that? Well, do you want to continue this way or that way? Get an interaction going, because the only person that knows what's happening inside is them. Now, over time, you'll learn to marry a physical response to a pretty good guess as to what's happening inside them, right? Because you'll have seen enough examples of it. But to get that kind of experience, you've got to do a lot of them. So what's happening now? Oh, that's right, that is happening now, right? Did you expect it to be there? You can do those cycles anyways. It doesn't prevent you from doing it, but you want to check in as often as possible. Can you see these things? These things are happening, these things are happening now. How do you feel now? How do you sense now? Notice around you. What else do you notice, right? Is that good? Are you enjoying this? You are enjoying this, aren't you? Right? You can be more indirect. This could be you can say something like, this can be a pleasant experience. How are you experiencing it now? Actually, it's a little sad. That's right, it is sad. You haven't found how to make this a pleasant experience yet, have you? Do you see how you can always roll with whatever they give you? But unless you ask, how will you know? Does that make sense? So thank you. I think it's a wonderful point. Just stand up again.
So can I just ask another question about this statement? Yes, that's right, you are sad. I kind of go, I don't know. I mean, I hear that, and I think, how do you know? Like, what?
I appreciate it. Because right now, not being in trance, it seems like a little glib to say it, right? And I'm not saying the words just to say the words. Remember, the way it'll be occurring is you're having shall we say, a sad moment, right? You're in trance in this scene, something sad's occurring, saying, what's happening now? You go, I'm a little sad. That's right. There is a little sadness there, isn't there? And I'll get a little sad with you, just to be part of that. And the question then is, would you like to continue here, or is it better for you to move somewhere else now, right? So what I'm doing is I'm acknowledging what's going on. I'm not trying to tell you, that's right, a little sad little girl. There's a very different manner that happens.
Well,
does that make sense?
Yes, and maybe this goes back to where we started this morning, which is there's a certain amount of, I think you call it H+.
Yeah.
I would call it stepping on somebody else's map. Like,
Yep.
When we as programmers are all over here on our map of reality, just saying words,
Exactly.
you actually make it harder for the subject to actually be able to continue the process, because now I'm trying to process your words on your map as opposed to being in my process.
And I am not asking anyone to just repeat words blindly. Everything you're saying, this is why we start with the H+, right? If you're coming from that state of mind where you're very positive, you want great things to happen for them, and a little sadness comes in from the client, then you allow that to be part of that H+. I see the sadness that you experience. This is the communication you're really getting at without actually saying it. I notice the sadness you're experiencing right now. And I also know there's more to you than just that. So you are sad right now. That's right, I understand. And there's so much more. That's the idea that's coming through my mind. My words are just a way of expressing that, right? If I'm just saying the words, that's right, because it's a formula, I lose a lot of people, right? I'll get some people, I'll lose others. Some people are more delicate, some more robust about it. It doesn't matter. The point is, if you're coming from the right place, that will change the way you say it and even how you phrase it, and it'll be more appropriate. And even then, chances are you'll run into someone at some point who still doesn't like it. You know what you call that? Tough luck, right? You can't predict how every single person will ever respond. What you can do is, if you notice that your responses are annoying the person, is you back off from that approach and you do another approach, because it will change the way you're feeling anyways. Do you see how this whole H+ helps you navigate these spaces a little bit better as well? Does that make sense to you guys? Does that kind of help a little? Sure.
So one final question. As a programmer, what might be a useful stance to have, or a way to better notice?
To notice the other person?
Yeah, because there's a noticing you're talking about,
Sure.
actually noticing
Sure.
what's happening over there.
Here is the real simple way to do this. Really simple, right? Of course, your H+ puts you in a bit of a trance, you see more things going on and so on. But just get used to asking the question, what's happening now, what just happened, what's going on now, and ask it incessantly, right? You may get to the point where you annoy your training partners a little bit by asking it too much. That's okay. Remember, we're free to make mistakes in here. But the point is, the more you ask it, the more you'll start connecting what you are aware of peripherally, but deleting, with the responses they're giving you. And suddenly, this is the third time I got the same response. Next time, you might see a similar twitch or a similar movement or a similar tension, and you'll go, you know what? I'm not quite sure why, but I've got a feeling that this is familiar to me, right? Then you'll ask, and you'll go, I knew it. And then your that's right will have that sense of like, I did know it, that was right. And that's where a lot more authenticity comes into what you're saying. Does that kind of make sense? So just ask a lot. Ask lots of time. What's going on now? What's happening now? What is it? And so on, right? So this gentleman here has been waiting patiently.
So I had a little trouble finding the symbol.
You as the hypnotist or you as the subject?
As the hypnotist.
Okay.
Okay. So I took
And
him.
you've checked with your client that you're allowed to talk about whatever you're about to talk
Yes.
about? Okay.
Yeah, he's good with that. So I took him down the path, and he found a secret town.
Excellent. Beautiful place. Nice scenery.
Okay.
Secret towns always rock.
So I said, look around you, and do you find anything of significance? Any symbol, anything that you see? And I feel that he couldn't find anything.
Okay.
He just kept mentioning the secret town.
Sure. Well, a couple of things spring to mind. Number one, it might be how you're suggesting it. Do you notice the difference between do you find something, some symbol of importance to you, versus search around, find that symbol that's waiting for you. Do you see how the second version has much more, I know it's there somewhere, versus the other one, is it there? Is it not there? Your personal doubt may have been communicated, making it a little more difficult. That's the first possibility. The second possibility will always come to my mind is if they keep coming back to something like, no, there's just a secret town, that's all I can see is a secret town. The secret town is the symbol. The place is it.
Well, that's what he said afterwards, that the secret town was the place.
Right. So you'll know this because they'll naturally keep coming back to it, right? I had one person, one of the seminars, I'm not sure if I've got it on tape or not, who basically, when you asked him, where are you now? What do you see? What he sends? Nothing. Okay? Well, you know, there's a symbol here, whatever it is, nothing. What are you sensing? Nothing. Well, describe a nothing. Well, it's kind of blank. It's like a black blankness. There's that black blankness there, isn't there? Yes. There's a black blankness. And you don't think it means anything, do you? No. You hear the doubt starting to creep in? And yet there it is. And no matter how hard you try to have something else in its place, it's staying blank and black, isn't it? Yeah? I wonder what it means. Huh? That blankness right there, which no matter how hard you try to get through it, is still there. It's clearly important. It wouldn't be there otherwise, would it? What do you mean? Do you see how we're slowly eroding his belief that it has to be something other than that black blankness? As it turned out, he was, I think it was like wrapped in a blanket or something, that's why he couldn't see. It makes sense, black blankness, right? And he was stifling, and when he got rid of it, it was less so, and you can get the idea of the metaphor that evolved, right? The point is, whatever they're coming up with is good enough. And if they make it not good enough, that's the reason where they're interfering with the process. And if they keep coming back to it insistently, well, that makes it my symbol, right? Plus, of course, there's the other added thing that there is a possibility that you might find it easier to suggest things that way. Does that help you?
Yes, yes. Before you had mentioned saying, look, what's that over there?
Yeah.
Would you say that when you're in the secret town to see if that maybe would
yeah,
be
if
the
you're in a
symbol?
secret town and say, well, have you spotted your symbol yet? Right?
Okay.
And he goes, no. Where do you think you need to look to find it? Oh, I don't know. Well, search around and let your instincts guide you to the right place, right? Now, if he's going around saying, it's just a secret town, I'm looking everywhere, there's just a secret town, there's this town, it's just a secret, right? Then I'm going to switch and go, that's right. there is a secret town. And you've been looking everywhere for the symbol, but all you're finding is a secret town. Can you hear my tone changing, making the secret town more important? You've been looking everywhere for something other than the secret town, and all that you're finding is that secret town. I wonder what that means. Clearly it's important to you, isn't it? Well, of course it is. It's secret town, right? But you see where we're going with this? You'll never know ahead of time exactly what will happen. How could you? But you can always move from one point to the other and so on. Does that kind of make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, that's good.
This gentleman here, just stand up so we can get the mic to you. Just click up.
Funny you brought that up, because that's exactly what happened to me. I didn't find a symbol per se.
As the subject? Or as a hypnotist?
And, as a subject.
Okay, great. Carry on.
But what I did find was a symbol in the context where when I arrived there, I looked around. So this is what it is, and I created meaning out of what I found there.
Right.
Which was very, very powerful.
Did you feel it?
Absolutely.
That's the symbol.
Further, I wasn't looking for. I didn't find a flashlight or anything exotic.
Right.
I found meaning in what I saw when I arrived.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what he.
And it is not untypical. It's not uncommon. So it's good for you guys to have these experiences, because hopefully it gets you out of this rigid mindset that it has to be this way. The unconscious mind is never just this way. Sometimes you luck out and it'll do it that way. Sometimes it'll sneak something in, and it's kind of like as a kid, did you ever want your parents to just read your mind and just do the right thing, or get you the right gift, and when they're asking for it, you said, oh no, nothing, I don't really want anything, but really you're hoping fervently that they've read your mind and will get it for you? Have you ever done that sort of thing, right? I know in a relationship, no one's ever done this thing where someone says, what's wrong? You're nothing. And you want them to figure it out, because if you have to help them along the way, then it's not worth anything. I know no one's done that before, right? So, and I will come to you right in a minute. So, the unconscious mind works in the same way. Sometimes it presents these things to us in the periphery, and it's saying, if this guy is smart enough to figure out that this is the important thing, then I'll work with him. If he misses it, then I don't trust him. Does that make sense? That's why you have to keep asking what's happening now, and it will keep bringing the same ideas back over and over and over again. You get more than one bite of this cherry. Does that make sense? Does that kind of help you guys? Is this useful? Yes. Yes? No? Maybe so? Yes. So go ahead, lady over here. Do we have a microphone back there? Go ahead.
I want to share. I was the subject.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share with everyone that I experienced everything Igor was talking about as regards abreaction. Another time, another place, I would have been screaming, throwing chairs, whatever. I was trying to remain composed as much as possible with the help of everyone around me. And what I learned was that what the lady was saying earlier about empty words. My partner was doing a great job. She was trying to have me fade out, and it just wasn't fading.
For sure.
It didn't fade. Not only did it not fade, it kept coming stronger.
Yep.
And Karsten tried to assist me. I heard his voice, but I heard it once and it just disappeared. And the only thing that brought me out, and I felt like I was in mortal danger.
That's part of the abreaction, right? It's a strong emotional response, right?
And the only thing that brought me out of it was when I heard Igor's voice. It was very firm but happy. And when I heard it, I felt it as though something popped. And that they were trying to, feel the floor, feel the safe chair. I didn't feel nothing.
Well, it takes you it basically takes you completely somewhere different, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah.
And
Igor was asking, how old are you? I didn't care how old I was. I was trying to get away from a mortal danger. It's like, what kind of question is that? And so I didn't know. It's not that I didn't know. It's just that my focus was somewhere else.
Exactly.
Which was trying to save my life.
Yeah.
And so I didn't care what my birthday was.
Yeah.
And the only thing that again helped me was Eagle's that voice, not just words, but I felt him. It wasn't the words, but I felt him. And when I felt him, because my partner was doing this, saying the same things,
Sure.
so was Carson, but it wasn't helping. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I felt like pushing them away, as a matter of fact.
Right, because now they're just little gnats just annoying you whilst
Yeah.
you're dealing with these other big things, like, I don't need you on top of it thing, right?
Exactly.
Now,
But what I learned from all this is that now I know how to handle someone going through an abreaction.
right. And in fact, this little group, do you mind if we talk about the experience a little bit? I won't go into any of the details. So we had a classic abreaction. Again, this is number 4 now in my repertoire. Yay. The first thing I would like to maybe change a little bit on your thinking of this, the only thing that got you out was not my voice and what I was saying. You're the one who did all the work, right? You got yourself out of it. What my job is to remind them that they can, right?
It was your guidance that brought me to...
Exactly. Just reminding them of that part of themselves, their personality, that can get them out of this, that's always got them out of this, because that's been around for some time, safely hidden away somewhere, right? And it's your work.
In that same vein, what really held me together when I felt like screaming and yelling and kicking and killing, before lunch when we had the exercise, my sanctuary, I was taken to that symbol. The symbol that I came up with was a flower bursting forth from a blanket of snow.
Beautiful.
And what I felt was alone but strong. And that's what kept me composed. And this time when we went back to that same scene, that whatever that symbol was, it was a twig. It was very curious, but that twig led me to that path that I did not want to go. It was part of it.
Right. And here's the magic words. Led me to the path I did not want to go on. Now, this is no comment on the hypnotist, what they did. Let's face it, this is training wheels, and we expect you to make plenty of very fortunate mistakes, and this was probably one of the best ones. What would have happened if they had checked, if your hypnotist checks in and says, and there's that path in some other place, are you ready to take the journey? What would you have said? No.
No, as a matter of fact, she led me away from it.
Right?
She was very good.
Oh, great, fantastic, even better.
She was very good. She was very much aware of what was happening to me. So
Which
she
is
led me away.
Picture perfect.
And she tried to distance me.
Yeah.
But it kept coming and following me.
It is the nature. Once you open Pandora's box, it will try and follow you. That's how abreactions work, how they escalate out of proportions.
It was very much escalating.
Absolutely. Now, the first thing to realize is, and this is more for you, you did a tremendous job getting yourself back out of that. This is where your metaphor of the flower being strong and alone is absolutely appropriate, right? Because you did the work. I can't do it for you. What I can do is remind people that they can do it for themselves. And that brings us back to the point we had over here, which is there is nothing different between what I was doing and what everyone else was doing. The only difference is in the confidence. In other words, I know for a fact that no matter how bad it seems right now, you are much more capable than that. In other words, you have abilities that go way beyond all that. Your resources, your personal power dwarfs whatever that thing was. It's tiny and insignificant insect by comparison. What I also know is that you've probably forgotten it. Right?
I did.
At the time, it's totally natural. That's what happens, right? So, if I start getting stern and, oh, get out, get out, come on, get out of this place, this is a bad place to be, I'm adding more fuel to the fire, aren't I? If I'm scared of it, and I'm not even experiencing it, right? You need to be very, very firm. How do you deal with this child that's going hysterical? Do you go, it's okay, now, shh, there now. Mummy's here. Shh, it's okay. No. You say, it's okay, calm down, calm down, calm down. Tell me what happened. Just calm down. You've got to be very firm, very insistent, right? If nothing else, an abreaction is one of the best ways for you to train yourself on how to give suggestions competently. Because there's no pussyfooting around now, like sometime, maybe, possibly in the future, when you feel like it, you might possibly let the scene fade, maybe. Up to you, right? Erickson who is a great hero of mine, was described as being this steel fist in a velvet glove. He was always this kind little old man who said these nice little things, but when he looked at you, when he spoke to you, he almost shook you to the core. You just couldn't help but do what he's asking of you. Does that make sense? Is that kind of conviction that you need. You don't need it right now, not today, because let's face it, how far in through your training are you? 1.5 days? Give yourself a break a little bit, right? But when you understand where you're going towards, all these little experiences you're having, someone not quite saying the right thing or the right tone and so on, this starts building your repertoire. And when it comes to the crunch point, when someone really needs your help, you'll know exactly how to deal with it, right? And you're right, my tone is always a little bit playful, shall we say, even when I'm being very serious, when something serious happens. Because they don't need any more bad stuff added on top of it. All they need is to know there's a lifeline here, right? Do what I say, and you will come join me where I am at. And where I am at is a good place. That is the sub-communication. Does that kind of make sense?
I think if you have been just firm without that playful tone,
Oh, I would have scared you off
I would
miles
have been
away.
really violently reacting.
For sure. Absolutely. Right?
And I
Why would she
think-
trust me if I'm just going to punish her more? Does that make sense? But if you understand, and hopefully you did understand, that I'm here with you, and this is not a big deal. It feels like a big deal, but it isn't. And as soon as that understanding comes through, then bit by bit, and it came in waves, didn't it? Right? And this is again typical. As the ab reaction receded, there's a point where it almost was gone, and bam, it came back again. Not as strong, but it was still shocking that it would come back. So we start all over again, and bang, it comes back, but not quite as strong. So they need to know that even if it comes back in those little cycles, eventually those cycles will stop. And they have they not? Right?
I think it's almost as if subconsciously I was willing to go there because the earlier conversation I had with you during break, I did what you did, was to address my subconscious, and I told myself that my problem or anyone else's problem is bigger than they are, than that problem. I am bigger than my problem.
Yep.
They are bigger than their problem.
Yep.
And I did this during lunchtime, and that helped a lot.
And you know what? And this is no surprise to me, because think about it this way. In terms of what you're telling the unconscious mind, your unconscious mind just gave you an absolute, incontrovertible proof that that is true, didn't it? It's a pretty dramatic way of doing it. I would humbly request that this is the only time it does it quite as dramatically as that. But you have no doubts at this point, do you?
Not at all.
And that's how clients will be when you work with them, guys. Because it is that powerful. Is this useful to you guys, by the way? Is this useful? So we have one question here, and I know I will come to you, and then you guys will come here. So this gentleman here was first. Okay, sure, please, go ahead.
Your explanation, your example of a black blank, when you explained that, and sometimes it's happen. So found symbol is black blank, and then what does black blank means? And client says, no, just black blank. And continuously we go there, and I want to know
You have
how
to interrupt them and say, you really think it means just blankness, right? And they go, yeah, you're really convinced that it's just blankness.
So what was the answer in your case is black blank means to clients?
Right. So you ask me specifically what happened with that particular client?
Yeah.
Or not in what you do generally?
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't quite recall. I believe it was something along the lines of he had something, it was something covering him. So he was like he's standing somewhere with a blanket over his head. So he couldn't see anything because it was covered, right? And symbolically, that was for him something along being constrained, being tied up. I don't recall the details anymore. It's been a while back now. So when he started realizing that, he basically said, I have to take it off. So he took it off, and he started seeing a different scene, a pleasant scene. I think there was, I can't recall. I would like to say that he had some family member or someone he liked present at that point, but I couldn't tell you that because, as I say, it's been a while now. But the point is, by metaphorically removing the blackness, once he realized what it was, that was part of his thing. Does that make sense?
So continually forced to find out.
You're constantly putting their attention back on what is going on, and as long as they accept the idea that whatever they're experiencing is meaningful, you cannot help but make meaning of it. Does Does that make sense? The meaning will eventually emerge. And it may not even be in your session. You may spend half an hour just doing with this and then just letting them go and then coming back. It might pop. In one example, again, a lot of these seminars blend into each other for me. But in one example, we had a guy who had a symbol. It was like riding on a bicycle or something like that. He had no idea what it meant. We did our little cycles, did a little demonstration with it, sent him back into the audience. He didn't know, I didn't know, he didn't have any particular change. 20 minutes later, he goes, got it! And he said, oh, sorry, right? So it may pop some other time. It doesn't matter. Does that help? So this gentleman here, and then we'll come over to you folks. There's one guy behind you first.
Maybe you could help me in this, Igor. I'm struggling a little bit with something. I'm really glad she brought that up about the abreaction, because I wanted to ask it before. But there's a contradiction, a direct contradiction in my mind about something here.
Fire away.
And the first thing is it like, I'd like some clarification and understanding on the stay calm stuff.
Yep. Simply
because it's like encoded in me now about pacing and leading. And if somebody is having an abreaction, and I'm gonna, I certainly recognize there's a place for me to be calm inside. But if I'm unwilling to pace their reality at some level, I mean, my picture is way out of their ballpark. And so I'd like you to
this is great.
Support me.
Just to a little explanation in terms of pacing, leading. It's an NLP term for kind of joining them, agreeing with what's ever happening, and then just moving it somewhere else. You said something very interesting, which I think is the heart of it, which is you have to pace them at some level. At some level. You don't have to pace them at every level. You just have to accept what is happening, right? And clearly it is, right? When you look at someone and say, in this terrible thing, and you say, the scene fades, just move the scene away, just move the scene away. It's almost like you're trying to negate the fact that it even exists, right? As opposed to, now, I don't 100% recall my starting words. Something along the lines of, I'm here now, just let that scene fade. I'd like you to just move it away. I know it's there, just move it away. That I know it's there is pacing, right? And just let it move, let it fade. You can do this, let it fade away. I don't want to join them in the emotional experience of the abreaction, because then you will increase the fear. Pacing and leading is not a universal principle. It's a useful one, but it does not apply in the way that's normally taught to everything, right? A better way of thinking about it would be, in this case, you accept where they're at and then help guide them out of it. That's another way of looking at pacing leading without being stuck at the idea of that you have to do everything that they're doing before you can move on. Does that make sense? So here's another idea that might also help. Everything that I've talked about, everything you will ever learn from me, and everything you will ever learn from another human being was made up by someone somewhere. It doesn't mean that it's the gospel truth. It doesn't mean it's always right. Everything has limitations and everything will fail at some point, right? And if what you understood pacing and leading to be fails at the point of an abreaction, great. Congratulate yourself for having the freedom to find a better way of interacting with an abreaction than you would have had otherwise. And if you expand what you think a pacing leading means to include pacing the experience without joining it, well, then in that case, your concept of pacing leading has increased. Either way is fine by me. Does that make sense? And by the way, if you find an even better way of dealing with abreactions, absolutely, let me know. Does this help? Does that clarify it? Thank you very much. This gentleman, thank you.
Hello.
Joe, can I have a glass of water?
The previous speaker said that when she was...
Can you repeat that, sorry?
The previous speaker said that when she was about to have abreaction, and because of you that it didn't happen, or else you had thrown chairs and killed people and all that. The question is, this decision is made by conscious mind or unconscious mind?
Yes.
If it is conscious mind, how does it follow through? And if it's unconscious mind, does it mean that immediately whatever you say is already stored in the unconscious mind and can be made use of immediately?
So just ask a question again very simply.
The decision was made not to cause trouble because of abreaction. Is it conscious or unconscious decision?
Yes, it is.
Which? Conscious or unconscious?
Yes, it is.
I don't get the answer.
I know. Just think about it.
If it's unconscious, does it mean that immediately
I
can use
understand
it?
all the consequences, but just think about the actual question. Is it conscious or is it unconscious? The answer is yes, it is. Now, as you're sitting there,
I'm not at the intellectual level to understand the answer.
I understand that. And that's why all the consequences you're thinking about and being afraid of, they have very little bearing. The fact is, all of that person is invested in the experience. Whatever is left of their consciousness is there. She clearly experienced it. She has memory of it. But the unconscious mind is part of it also, because otherwise it couldn't be as powerful, right? So there is... May I let you into a secret here? Would that be okay with you guys? Yes. The idea of a conscious mind and an unconscious mind is an invention. We do not know if it exists. We don't even know if it's true. It is useful for us as hypnotists to believe it's true, at least whilst we're learning about hypnosis, but it is an invention, as is pacing and leading and anything else. To the extent you make it real, you force yourself to try and answer questions that don't exist sometimes. Does that make sense? And to the extent that you're willing to realize that it's an invention, sometimes you can get rid of the invention and think of the person in a different way. For example, neuroscience has no place to locate the unconscious mind in. We have non-conscious processes, but is that the unconscious mind? How can those processes reason? How can all these other things occur? To put a bigger frame around this, there was it Hildegard? I think it was Hildegard did a set of experiments. In his experiments, they wanted to find out if someone's doing pain control, do they really feel pain, or are they just ignoring the pain, right? He's asking the same question. When you put someone's hand in a bucket of ice to the point where it would normally hurt, but you suggest the pain away, is it consciously being ignored, and the unconscious mind is still sensing it, or both the conscious and the unconscious mind are not sensing it, right? Here's the problem. He actually found that there was some part of the person aware that the fact there was pain, it's just it wasn't consciously aware at that point. But here's the problem. What if he suggested that person, that part of them, that unconscious mind to exist by the mere fact of asking the question? He created an unconscious mind at that point. So everything you ask, every question you ask, and every presupposition you make will cause it to exist. The mind is great at accepting suggestions and will make them be. Do you have a higher conscious mind? Do you have guardian angels? They will be created if you suggest them in that way. So it's not a, I understand the reason you're asking the question, but it's not a functional question to ask. Because the very fact that you're asking it, no matter which way you answer it, you're going to create that. What is more important is to ask yourself, can you spot the abreaction? Can you set the parameters so that it happens in a safe way if it's going to happen at all? And can you pull them out of it afterwards? The rest is a bit of a mystery. We could quantificate, we could make things up. I could tell you, I know exactly what's going on. But the fact is, nobody does. We don't have the tools to be able to explore that kind of phenomenon without introducing things that will change the very nature of the answer. Does that kind of help you a little bit? It's a very complex question you're asking, and it's one that doesn't exist in nature because you only have one mind. And we're just dividing it up for the purposes of being better hypnotists, and eventually it'll come right back together again, and you'll do stuff which shouldn't work in hypnosis, but it really does work because you're looking at it differently. Does that kind of help?
I may be wrong, but before I came to attend this course, talked to some doctors. Some doctors are in favor of this subject. Others are not, including psychiatrists. Is it because of the non-data functioning of the mind of the hypnotism that caused the other more data-based people refuse to accept it?
It's a good possibility, but you'd have to ask them, right? Ultimately, seriously, you really need to understand, whilst what we're doing here is powerful, it is powerful, isn't it? Right? In terms of what is actually happening, I can only present you with metaphors, with models that are accurate enough that you can work them. And every single thing you will learn from me and from any other hypnotist will at some point break down, fall apart. I don't necessarily want to get into that whole metaphysics of hypnosis aspect, because at least at this level, it is not useful to you. At this level, it's just fine to realize there's a conscious mind and an unconscious mind and to pretend that they are true. You'll be great hypnotists based on that model alone. And at some point, you'll go beyond that. And many of the questions that you will be asking me, I will answer you in a way that you will not like, because the question you're asking is already building a limitation into whatever you're doing. Does that make sense? So hence, some answers are just like this. Maybe I should have just done that. Go ahead. Is this useful to you guys, yes?
Okay, so as my experience as a client, I was walking through a forest, went to the sanctuary area,
Beautiful.
which was a clearing, and the light's shining down. I am very, very well, deep and relaxed, and
Beautiful.
the symbol is, I can see the symbol, start walking up towards it.
Yep.
It's basically right at my feet, and then
Yep.
suddenly I've twitched before while I was deep in trance and nothing happened.
Yep.
This time, snapped immediately out of it, and I mean, without Dee saying, I was just about to say this, I wasn't even aware that what was happening right before I just kind of snapped out of it.
Right.
I don't know necessarily why, because I know that the symbol was there. It was like a 4-leaf clover, but
Right.
I don't really know. Okay.
It's a mystery. The only thing you can do as a hypnotist in that situation is when they snap out, say, that's right, just close your eyes. Right? Do you mind role-playing with this?
Sure.
Would you please hold a microphone for him? Can you guys all see? I'd prefer you staying there just because it's easier there. But
You want me
just,
standing?
No, just stay there because
Okay.
it's good. You've just kind of snapped, let's just put the scene a little bit. You just sort of snapped out of this trance and so on, right? There we go. There you go, that's it. Just close your eyes for me for a minute, would you? Put yourself back, there you go. Put yourself back in that scene, that clearing, the light, and the symbol. That's it, right back to the symbol. Can you see it again? There you go, you're feeling calm, relaxed. Now, what just happened there? What's that?
I just hit that point of...
That point of just sinking right into the trance, right? It's wonderful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that symbol's still there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And you have no idea whether the jolt you just experienced was part of this or not, right?
Correct.
That's right. And the question I have, and only you'll be able to answer with your instinct, is, does it really matter?
Nope.
That's right. It really doesn't matter, does it? It really doesn't. And it's a wonderful lesson to learn, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's a wonderful lesson that all these questions we have at the conscious level, a lot of them really don't matter. I wonder what other places you can apply this new knowledge to. That's right. There you go. What was that? What was that?
A part of me thinking about places where I'm looking for more than is necessary.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Now, you didn't know that's going to come, did you?
No.
Thank God you jolted out of trance. That in itself might have been the real symbol, and that light might have just been a distraction. Who knows, right? Does it really matter?
Nope.
Because the important thing is that you've learned something of great importance, is it not?
Yes.
You glad you came back?
Yes.
Whenever you're ready, bring all these lessons back into the room with you, in whatever way you need to. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Very good. Does it answer for you guys as well?
Yes.
So, if in doubt, make the phenomenon the symbol. Everything has meaning to the unconscious mind. Everything. It can't create... let me do this for you guys. Do you want to experience how it's almost impossible for the unconscious mind to not make meaning of things? Would you like to have a direct experience of that? Yes. Okay. Everyone right now, be spontaneous. Do something spontaneous right now. Quick. Whoa. Why are you all doing the same thing? Why is it that everyone's screaming and yelling and so on? What is going on here? It's not very spontaneous, is it? You're doing the same thing. I'm thinking of an object and it's green. It's small enough to hold in my hand. What is it? Quickly. Apple? Frog? Tennis ball? Four-leaf clover? Now that's more spontaneous, isn't it? Why? When I ask for something spontaneous, well, it doesn't really exist. One person starts yelling, everyone else follows. That's a priming response, right? Because for a moment you get overloaded with performance anxiety, your mind shuts down, you can't think of anything, so you follow what everyone else is doing, and it seems like outside of your normal behavior enough that it must be spontaneous, right? That's how it works. But when I set the scene, when I put constraints, it's green, it's small enough for my hand, you all start going like, oh, I know what it is, because your mind is automatically filling in the blanks for you. That's your unconscious mind putting meanings. The tennis ball, the apple, the four-leaf clover, and the frog are your symbol right now. And if I sat there long enough with each one of you and explored the apple, the cinnamon frog, whatever it was, right? Things would still come out of that. Does that make sense to you guys? So everything you do is symbolic at some level. Everything they tell you and do is symbolic at some level. So how can you fail to get a symbol? Because that in itself is symbolic, isn't it? And that's when you really catch them. That's when the head trip really begins. Because it's true. Does this help you guys? Yes. We'll have one back here and then we'll come over to you. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you use this induction in therapeutic cases.
Sure.
How do you choose those cases? I mean, what kind of situations
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
Over here. And I promise you, if you don't know the answer by the end of the training, you can ask it again.
It is to my understanding that the conscious mind can keep track of 7 plus or minus 2 processes.
Yep, that's kind of short-term memory. Yeah.
How is there not a conscious and unconscious mind?
Exactly.
Cool.
Are you beginning to feel it? The air is getting a little bit weird. The vibes are starting to change. Who here is starting to slowly fade in terms of their mental processes? Starting to lose grasp of reality a little bit. It's kind of hard to think lucidly and clearly. Anyone? Right? I promise you, it's going to get worse. Okay, folks, so I think that's a nice rounding off on this thing. Do you understand what I mean by the dynamic mental imagery induction? It's dynamic because you're interactive. It's mental imagery because you make mental imagery. There's one quick thing that I want to add into this, which is a solution someone asked me about earlier on, actually during the break, I think it was, which a lot of hypnotists are afraid of, but I think is a no-brainer. And that's the question of, what if they can't visualize? What do you do then, right? Is there anyone, and I hope there is there anyone in this room who cannot visualize? One person? Anyone else? Great. Do you mind demonstrating, being a volunteer for this? You don't have to say yes if you don't want to. Don't go pushing her, it's her choice. Coming up, give her a round of applause, folks. Can I have someone with a mic up here, please? So, this is my instant visualization training, TM.
I used to.
You used to be able to visualize?
But then one of my visions was fluorescent, and I thought, well, that shouldn't be fluorescent, and I haven't had one since.
Oh, okay, that's why. Problem solved, off you go. And by the way, this will be very typical. I never used to be able to make pictures in my mind, or should I say more accurately, I never used to be able to see the pictures in my mind. And I'll explain what I mean by that shortly. Until I did a few things which then allowed me to see them again, and now they follow me everywhere, you know. So there's 2 parts we can take with this. This itself we could use as a therapeutic thing to actually start clearing up, but I don't want to go down that path because we're not doing therapy right now. I want to demonstrate the instant cure-all, can't see things solution problem. Make sense?
Good.
So here's the thing. Can you just close your eyes for a moment? And I want you to think about where you live. Can you do that? Like your home, right? Now tell me, which is larger, your bedroom or your living room?
Living
can
room.
I have an assistant up here just holding the microphone, please?
Living room.
That's fine. We'll just let someone else do that strain, right?
It's hard.
That's fine. They're strong. They've been going to the gym just for this. Nice and close. There you go. So the living room, right?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Because that's the way it is.
Well, it is the way it is, but I don't know that, and it still is the way it is. How do you know?
because I remember being in both rooms.
That's right. You do remember being in both rooms, and you know that one is larger than the other. Is that correct?
Yes.
So whatever you did to know that one room is larger than another, whatever you did to think about those two rooms, that's all I'm going to ask you to do when I ask you to imagine, visualize, or picture something in your mind. Now, I know you can't necessarily see those rooms in your mind yet, but that's okay. However you thought about those rooms is more than enough. Is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like you to do now is come with me to a pleasant scene, somewhere nice. Where would you like to go to if you could go anywhere in the world? Some real nice, comfortable scene.
Okay. The beach in Kauai, Hawaii.
The beach in Kauai, Hawaii, right? Now, if you and I were in the beach in Kauai, Hawaii, you'd experience certain things, wouldn't you?
Uh-huh.
I'd like you to think about those for a moment. The sand, that beautiful ocean. Is it daytime or nighttime?
Day.
It is the daytime, isn't it? And what do you notice out on the ocean over there? Is it
boats?
There's boats on the ocean. How do you know that?
Because that's where boats are.
That's right. Now see what's going on here? At some level, she must be creating the scene to see the scene to be able to answer the questions. Because there have been plenty of oceans without any boats, right? And plenty of beaches without any boats. But then, because she's not allowed to see those pictures, there's been a block, a veil pulled across consciousness. There's a backwards rationalization that says, well, the only reason I could have answered it is because that must be what's normally there. It's not. That's my orienting response. The boat was not there before, but it is now. It doesn't matter too much that it's rationalized afterwards. The fact is it existed. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
That's right. It doesn't have to make entire sense to you. I'd like you to move up and down the beach until something there surprises you. What is that? Just think about the beach in Kauai, Hawaii. Something surprising. Maybe it's even out of place. Who knows?
I saw a kayak.
There's a kayak there, right? Did you expect the kayak to be there?
No.
Is it on the beach or in the water?
On the beach.
Of course it's on the beach. It's on the beach, the kayak. I wonder if it would take you somewhere. Somewhere real pleasant. Somewhere you could to find something else of importance to you. Somewhere real safe.
It's not my kayak.
It's not your kayak, is it?
No.
Would you like to borrow it for a while?
Okay.
Okay. Ooh, we're getting a little risky, are we?
Yes.
Don't worry, we'll return it nice and safe. Whenever you're ready, I'd like you to step into the kayak and let it take you to a real safe place, a nice place.
Okay.
Somewhere where you get to find something that just makes you feel good. Does that make sense?
That whole island makes me feel good.
It does, doesn't it? So where does this kayak take you? There you go. Let that journey take you through. You don't need to make too much effort.
I'm just on the water.
Just on the water.
On the water.
Is it pleasant on the water?
Yes, I love the water.
You love the water, don't you? And there you are on the water, having a pleasant experience. And whenever you're ready, you can come back to the beach, leave the kayak where you found it. There you go. That's right. That was nice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And whenever you're ready, let that scene fade from your mind, coming back to your room.
What room?
And the room in your house, your bedroom, your
Okay.
living room. And then let that scene fade from your mind and come back to here. How was that? Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
It was pleasant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But of course you didn't see anything, did you?
Not like I used to.
Exactly. And that's the problem there. Not like I used to. In other words, what is there wasn't good enough. That's why you can't see anything. Does that make sense? Whereas now you can sense it.
I sense it, but I don't see it. Everything just
Exactly. And that's fine.
blank.
In terms of the experience we're doing here, did you all notice we hit exactly the same waypoints? We got visual information. We got an orienting response. We got unusual things, boats, kayaks, right? And we found that place that's of sanctuary now. It's on the water. Notice I didn't push the issue, right? The water was the place to get to. It wasn't somewhere else. I could have pushed it, but why bother? It's already there. And to the extent that, and this is important for you in terms of experiencing hypnosis yourself, to the extent that whatever your mind gives you is good enough, you'll get way more than you ever could have dreamed for, and really good things. And to the extent that you're looking for it to be a specific way, In other words, you must see an image other than just experiencing it another way.
I miss what I used to have.
Right. Now that is something you can get back. That's something that can be done. But only once you accept what's actually there now. When you learn to accept what your mind gives you, your mind will give you more of what you want. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Very good. Give a nice round of applause, folks. Thank you. Was this a useful demo? Right? Because there's lots of people out there who think they can't visualize, and it's irrelevant. It's immaterial, right? You can almost always guarantee that people who think they can't visualize at some point made a decision not to. Either, as in your case, where the picture wasn't good enough, there's neon lights, well, I don't want that, so they took it all away. Or more typically, kids with a vivid imagination, their parents say, oh, too vivid, no strange friends and so on, so they block it all out. Or something else like that happens. It doesn't matter if you ever get to the root of what that was, really it doesn't. In order to do this experience, do you see how we can do it? Get visual information without them thinking that they're ever seeing something in the first place. Does that make sense to you guys? Can you all do this? Right? Now, the way I like to start, I'll come to you in a second, the way I like to start is real simple, is I'm going to ask him to go somewhere familiar, to think about somewhere familiar. In this case, it was the house, 2 bedrooms, and ask for a comparison that requires visual information. Maybe change the color of a room. Ask what size it is. Ask how high the door is, right? These are all things that they can only answer by seeing the picture. Afterwards, then you can challenge and say, well, how do you know it if you can't see pictures? Some people will rationalize and go, oh, well, it's always been like, I just remember it. And others will go, you're right. That's weird. Which is fine. Either way is a good response. The point is, and this is the thing you want to get across to them, whatever they were doing in order to be able to answer that question, that's good enough. And the emphasis here, folks, is good enough. Right? They want something different, so this can't be good enough, and that's where the block begins. Does that make sense? If it's good enough, then great is around the corner. And that's one of the ways you would break that veil to allow them to be able to see pictures again and so on. That's exactly how I did it myself. And you know what the irony is? When you help someone through that, when they can't see the pictures, they do this thing for a while, there comes a point where they'll suddenly turn around and go, the weirdest thing, I can see pictures now, and when I think about it, I've been seeing them for the last half an hour, only I didn't realize I was seeing them. They will literally say things like that to you, right? It's because your awareness, your conscious mind will be slow to catch up, and then suddenly you realize that it's been there all along. Does that kind of make sense? Was that a useful step? All right, guys, let's take a nice 15-minute break. Chill out, relax, get some water, and then come back here in 10 minutes to be ready to start in 15. Off you go. All right, is everyone back in the room? If you're not here, raise your hand, would you?
Mentally or physically?
Yeah, that's where it starts getting a little problematic, right? Now we're getting into the area of Descartes. Okay, so at this point, assistants in the back. Assistants in the back, can we have 5 or 6 people with manuals, please? We have a wonderful manual. It's beautiful. It's got a yellow cover, orange, yellow, depending on how your eyes are adjusted. It has words inside and occasionally a pretty picture or two, but there we go, like this. Oh, pretty pictures. Your assistants are going to hand one out to you now, so make sure you have one and one copy only, please. Now, as you're grabbing your manuals, don't worry, the assistants will hand these out. As you're grabbing your manuals, folks, I would like to ask you to make sure you put your names on them. Even though you think you can recognize it now, everyone else has exactly the same manual, and this room will start getting very messy, right? So you make sure you put your name somewhere where it's visible, because manuals do have a habit of ending up in all sorts of places. Then you can recognize it again.
It's manual, not name, right?
Say again?
It's recognition of your manual, not name.
Yes, exactly. Either will do for me right now. So, do you not have a manual? Oh, sorry, we'll have some more people coming through. Don't worry. We just have to get a refill from the back. So do put your names in it. If you lose a manual, we're going to make it expensive for you to buy another one, so please don't start losing these things. You are warned. You may have to sell your children to get a replacement. If you have no children, you may have to make them and then sell them to get a replacement. You may enjoy the making of it, but goes downhill after that. So please make sure you take care of your manuals. We've got enough for everyone to have one, but there's not a particularly spare one because there's a lot of you. And there's only so many trees in the forest. So of course you'll naturally be leafing through it. That's what everyone does when they get a manual. I'd like to let you know the best way of using this manual during the course, right? You see the yellow page and the black page? If you make sure that they're sandwiched on the either side like this, that's probably the most useful way to use the manual whilst you're here. It basically means, oh, you have 2 orange pages. That's even better. You do not need the manual, is what I'm saying. Every exercise in here will be on the board. If it's not on the board, then I'll show you what page is in here so you can go back and check it again. Here's how you'll be using this manual. If you want to look through it tonight, whatever night, it's up to you. You want to write notes in it, that's fine. You do whatever you feel like. At the end of this process, around about day 5, I will ask you specifically then to look through the manual. And I guarantee you that everything, except for one section which I will point out to you then, you will know absolutely everything in this manual. You'll recognize it, it'll make sense, and it'll be a no-brainer to you. It's a promise, right? If at any point my promise should fail, at that point you can come back to us and we will fix whatever is missing in terms of your understanding or something like that. So everything we're doing here is in here. Everything that's in here, you will know first before you need this. And if you want to use it, if you want to look through it, if you want to put notes in it and all the rest of it, help yourself. It's entirely your choice. Does that make sense? Yes. So this is an aid. Do not make this your... do make something that's made your life easier into something that's going to make your life more difficult, right?